Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's HR Daily Advisor webcast. We want to thank you all for joining us for today's program, How to Elevate Your Candidate Engagement Strategy, sponsored by Jobvite. My name is Michelle from the HR Daily Advisor, and I'm here to go over a couple of housekeeping items before I pass the presentation over to our speakers. So just a couple of notes. The console that you're looking at right now offers multiple application widgets that you can use. You can resize any of these widgets or move them around and minimize them as you wish. There's a media player button where you can play with the volume of the presentation. Please take note that there is no dial-in number for today's event and that the audio will be streaming directly from your computer speakers. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. If your issue does not resolve, please enter a question into the Q&A widget, and our team will be happy to assist you. All right, everyone. Now please join me in welcoming our speakers, Tony Souza and Claire Alloway, to the floor. Claire is part of the Jobvite marketing team and has 5+ years of marketing experience for B2C and B2B consumers. And Tony Souza is the Director of Talent Acquisition at DentWizard. Tony is an experienced leader in the areas of talent acquisition, management, and strategy. His passion is ensuring that the right people are brought into the company, rooted in a positive culture and maintained throughout their career. He's led and worked on several high-profile projects related to talent operations, applicant tracking, HRIS, organizational development, and HR process. He continues to implement new and out-of-the-box methods to drive corporate strategy and positive organizational change. So Claire and Tony, thank you both so much for being here today. And Tony, I'll now pass things over to you.
So as Michelle said, my name is Tony Souza. I work for DentWizard as Director of Talent Acquisition and Talent Strategy. DentWizard is a business-to-business auto reconditioning company. We're international, nation's largest provider in auto reconditioning services. For us, as we kind of get in this today, we are always looking for qualified applicants. And like a lot of companies, we struggle with finding certain types of people, whether it be entry level or experienced in certain jobs. For us right now, it's experienced paint techs. That's the job I have open the most and the hardest to fill. But just like everything, it's cyclical. It'll change, and next year it could be paintless dent repair trainees. The ideal candidate for us is really a self-starter. Somebody who enjoys working unsupervised, someone who talks about training and candidate experience. Somebody who works in the automotive industry, is very interested in cars. We have a few texts just to kind of outline that. Someone who is paintless dent repair, paint, wheels, keys, interior. We have F&I products. They work in challenging environments. So like in our area, they work outside a lot. They're mobile. And that can be very difficult for a lot of people, especially if you work in the Northeast or the Midwest where, in the winter you're freezing your butt off because it's, negative 20 degrees and you're trying to paint a car outside. So that's mainly about our candidates. And kind of the company as a whole. Pass it off to Claire here for a second.
Hey everyone, my name's Claire, and I'm kind of serving the larger big picture role in this presentation. So Tony's obviously given you some specific and really fantastic details about DentWizard and his story. I'll jump in every once in a while just to give you some higher level industry information. And the stat right here that you're seeing, 82% of job seekers have a job but are open to new opportunities. This came from our survey that we do every year, This one came out from last year, and we actually saw this uptick to 85% of job seekers are open to new opportunities with this year's survey that's coming out next week. And actually, just a fun anecdote, because I have a lot of TA and HR people on the call, your department are the ones that are most likely to be casually and passively looking at open job opportunities or report to be doing that. I just thought that was interesting. As you guys are working to retain some great talent, you guys are looking yourself. But anyways, on that note, talking about people are always looking for new opportunities, that makes your job both really tough and really easy, that you have a very fluid talent pool to search from. And along with that, specifically for Tony, as he mentioned, he's looking for some pretty specific candidates who are tough and hardy and independent, but also want to work for a fantastic company and need to search for those open opportunities. So Tony's going to give you a little more real life information on how DentWizard and his team have tackled this right now.
Great. So, I'm going to start the story, with us is I came into the company about a little over 2 years ago when this whole project started, when candidate engagement really became a thing for DentWizard. So when starting this project, it was important that we got everyone in the room to do a full assessment of the new as well as the old, come up with new ideas, improve upon old ideas. And being fairly new to DentWizard, I used this to my benefit. I did what anybody else would do, and I blew everything up and decided to kind of drill down on my own agenda. And I do realize that's not what most people would do, but I am a glutton for punishment, and I am a very kind of extroverted person, so that's what I did. And so throughout this presentation, I'm going to refer to a few systems we use. So I'm going to tell you a brief story about how we ended up with Jobvite, which is the applicant tracking system we use. The whole process kind of ties into what we're here to talk about today. So when I came in, we had a applicant tracking system called PC Recruiter. It was a system that had been in place for a long time, and nobody had done any updates to it, and it was just running status quo, and it was really just a repository for people that came in. And the recruiters would look at it, and then each recruiter kind of had their own way of how they submitted candidates and moved people around. There really wasn't a process. There wasn't continuity behind anything. So before I came in, the company as a whole had decided to sign a contract with another ATS. And I'll leave their name out of it, but it was another applicant tracking system, large company. We used their systems in other places, and they thought it was going to be the best process. They came in with the best spiel to begin with. And we started doing this process, and I came in and we started doing the implementation, and the more and more we got through, we started to realize that it wasn't going to do what we needed it to. There were flaws in the way the managers could log in. There were flaws in the mobility. There were flaws in some of the things they said it could do, but it can't because they're still developing it. And I wasn't there to put my 2 cents in, so I said, I stood in front of a board and said, hey, I will make it work. That's my job. However, I realized very quickly that I needed to make some changes. And so I got up and got in front of that same board again and said, all right, guys, I don't think this is the right system. I don't think this is what we should be doing. We should really kind of cut ties. And I had a lot of support as well. And we should cut our losses now and find a new system. So fast forward, I walked out of that room not knowing if I was still going to have a job. And they came back and said, okay, we agree. Let's find that new system. And so again, we'll fast forward through a bunch of RFPs and looking at all these different systems, either some I had used in the past, some new ones that I was looking into, all the way through to Jobvite. And if anybody has any questions specifically on a lot of those systems, or is looking at new systems, I'm always happy, to put my 2 cents in. You'll definitely, through this presentation, realize I definitely have a favorite, these days, and it was a new system we brought on called Jobvite. And so from this kind of story, the best practices that I want you to take away from here is, when you're trying to make a process better, start by looking at the history and don't play the blame game. I could have stood up in front of the C-suite and the board of directors and said, hey, I didn't bring this system in. It's not my fault. I can't make it work. No, I was a, good soldier and said, hey, I'll make it work. But if we really want it to be impactful for the company, if we really want to drive what's important to us, which is recruiting as a service for our managers and recruiting as a service to our candidates, then we need to blow up the system, blow up this process, and do it a new way, even though we just started going down this road. Mistakes will be made, but don't get caught up in them. Use the experience and move forward. Good companies realize that mistakes were made. Managers didn't get to their level by not making mistakes. CEOs and board members, they've all made mistakes. They've all been there, and it's better to just kind of admit them, move on, learn from them, than to kind of dwell on them. If you're new to a role, use that to your benefit. Use that and don't be intimidated to make waves. If you're there in that role, you were brought in for a reason. I've recognized that in the several instances where I've been brought into a company and sometimes I had to have that conversation. Hey, I'm here for a reason. I'm here because you guys needed a change. You guys needed to make things better, and we're going to do that together. And then lastly, don't keep doing things because it's always been done that way. I know that sometimes, you work for a leader, or you come in under somebody who maybe got promoted and they put in process and they put in systems, and it's difficult to make waves or kind of say that, you feel like you're kind of calling their baby ugly. It's okay. You got to have those conversations and you got to do that. And I actually have a story that I think will kind of tie into this here in a few slides. So, I am actually very, very lucky because I am a type of person that, I move on to new shiny. So don't always worry about the things that, changing things that have been done, but also don't change things just to make change. Make sure that there's a reason you're doing them. I am guilty of going to work on the new shiny things. I'm always coming up with crazy ideas and plans, and I'm that kind of visionary type of person. I've been lucky enough to surround myself with a team that can execute all my crazy plans, as I go on to the next one. So, that's a great way to also is make sure, your team is that dynamic, and we were able to do that. So moving on to the next slide here, I want to speak to a couple kind of key priorities. DentWizard's recruiting process was historically built off of guesses and what we called swag, which was strategic, wild, another name for a donkey, guess. We had absolutely no data, and if we did, it was on a spreadsheet that had been manipulated to tell a story. And it's not that the data was wrong or that somebody did this maliciously. It was just, that's what spreadsheets are for, is you figure out how to, get an answer that you want. And it's very easy to do that. So, we made a lot of changes and said, okay, we're not going to use spreadsheets. We also made a lot of assumptions. We hoped no one asked for data. I came in, and as I stood in front of our CEO and our COO and on, further down the line, the board of directors, I said, look, I don't have the data. I can't tell you, when I came in, even a few months into it, I couldn't tell them what our time to fill was. I could give them a swag, but I couldn't say with data, hey, our time to fill was this for this job or for this region or for this recruiter. So, but I was able to say that I was confident we were going to get there, which is where we're at today. We also realized that the process made the candidates jump through a lot of hoops, which resulted in people kind of falling off, that bottleneck. That's really important to look at. You know, when we're talking about customer and candidate experience, you know, the candidates are our customers, we really need to think about where those bottlenecks are and try to figure out. And I've got some slides in here as we go through the process about how do we make those changes? How do we define where those bottlenecks are? So again, you know, the priorities that I knew we needed to make the change were we needed to eliminate those swag. We needed to be customer and candidate centric. We needed to customize our process and not be the typical recruiting process. And we needed to track items diligently and make trusted metrics. I'm a huge data nerd. You'll hear me say that a couple times. So that was something that was really easy to me and really important. So remember the pot roast principle. So this is a story maybe some of you heard. I heard it years and years ago, I think from a college professor. And the story goes like this, that there's a family getting together for a large meal. A young woman, she observes her mother cut a pot roast in half before putting it into the pot, and she asks her mother why she cuts the roast in half. Her mother replies, well, that's the way my mom did it, so that's how I do it. So, you know, this young woman being curious, she goes to her grandmother and asks why cutting the roast in half is so important before it goes in the pot. And her grandmother responds that it's just the way her mother did it, so that's how it's done. You know, don't question it. Really wanting to know this answer because she's persistent, she goes to her great-grandmother and asks the same question, hoping to learn that there's some magical secret to this recipe. And her grandmother, you know, looks at her for a minute and responds, well, you know, I don't know why they do it. I just didn't have a big enough pot. So we run into this a lot during business. Everyone's afraid of change, maybe because there's no guarantees or you don't want to offend somebody who may have put those plans in place. But change is important. Don't do things just because it's what's been done. You know, maybe what's been done isn't working. Maybe what's been done, the status quo is, you know, mediocre. And we can always strive to make the candidate experience best. If we really do that, you know, you're going to see those results pay off. Candidate experience, in my mind, there's just no possible substitution, no other thing that's more important than that. Because in like for DentWizard, you know, out of the over 3,000 employees we have, 90% of those are technicians out doing the work. And without those technicians, we don't have a business. We're not making any money, and I don't have a job.
Awesome. So with that note of kind of the higher level where you came in and joined DentWizard, we're going to start off in talking specifically about sourcing. I know a problem that most of you on the call have, and definitely I know Tony did, was just finding those candidates. So Tony, maybe you can go through some examples of how you started off that process of discovering all of these candidates who maybe didn't know about DentWizard or didn't know about all those great opportunities that you had to offer.
Sure. Sorry about that. So this is something that I am very involved in right now, something that's really, really important to me. And so up on the screen you'll see EVP, and for those of you who don't know that one, that's employee value proposition. So unique employee value propositions are really important. I don't know how many times I've listened to recruiters talk about EVPs, or I've been on the phone with a recruiter trying to, you know, hook me into a job or something, and I hear these stock value propositions. Know what you're looking for when you start sourcing. Take the time to learn why your top performers came to the company, what attracted them, what retains them. You know, rather than doing this all on my own, I partnered with an agency who does this work. They're helping us get a kind of branding initiative going. We're in the very final stages of it now. They assisted us in finding the EVPs and built a brand kind of around that. Three big takeaways here on the value propositions is make sure the EVPs grab the attention of a candidate. Don't be stock. Don't be, you know, this is a great place to work. We have a great culture. We have computers here. We give you a phone. I mean, it's boring. You don't want to You want to tell the candidate why. Why is it a great culture? Why is it a great place to work? Why is it fun? I know that we're not all Google. We can't sell a slide. We can't sell, modular work and bean bags and stuff like that. But we all have something in our company that's sellable to our candidates. For DentWizard, it's the fact that, like with our guys being mostly mobile, it's that they have this level of autonomy and they can go and work on their own. They don't have a manager breathing down their neck. And if they're a fast worker and they're hungry, they can make pretty much as much money as they want because the work is there. We only have a 30-something% market share. So, they have the ability to grow the business. Make sure everyone's on the same page about what a great employee looks like. I've been in situations where managers have been, I see this candidate. I want this introvert person who's going to sit behind their desk and be in front of a computer all day and only get up, for lunch 30 minutes and then to leave. And this other manager's like, no, I want somebody creative and that's going to be bouncing off the walls and engaging with the group, and they're really social. And the problem is you'd think the best spot was somewhere in the middle, and it's not. So you really got to get together and drill down to find that candidate, because if you're going and kind of bouncing all over and you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know what to sell, and you're just going to start providing a bad experience to your candidates, not to mention your managers, but mostly for what we're talking about today, to your candidates. You want to be able to speak to them confidently about what it's going to be like to work there and why they should, consider coming to work for DentWizard or, Acme Company or, wherever they are. And then back up your thoughts and assumptions with opinions of others. Ask employees, ask candidates. We use a great system called Surveil, and I'm going to touch on it here in a few slides. But we do a lot of surveys, a lot of information gathering. Again, remember, huge data nerd here. So the next step is invest in your search. If you're a decision maker, or even if you aren't, I can imagine you get multiple calls a day from different sources about, telling you that, you can find great talent through us. You just got to, sign up or pay this money or, come and talk to me so we can do this. And you have to not get caught up in a great sales pitch or all these great stats while vetting out if this is something you want to try. I firmly believe we need to try different resources. And I am a firm believer in spending every bit of my budget. Ask my boss. So, I'm not saying, don't go after, don't listen to these, but I know we all get a lot of them. So sometimes you have to take the leap and try it. Two ways that we find the right resources are tracking where our candidates come from when they apply. So some systems do this, some systems don't. Jobvite does. It's very prominently displayed, so my recruiters are always looking at where the candidates come from. That's how we know where to invest in putting our jobs in the future. But we can also run reports. I run those reports weekly and monthly and year over year to see all those different things. The other one is talking to our candidates. The recruiters, one of the two big questions they ask for this are, where else are you looking for a job? Not necessarily the companies, but where else? What other websites have you been on? Where did you see our job? But, oh, you're looking at applying at Abra Auto Body too. Where did you see their job posted? Those are really important because we find out where our competitors are posting. And then one other really important one is, where is the first spot you went when you decided you were looking for a new job? That question was asked of me one time, a long time ago, and I had to be like, I think it was Google, or, it was LinkedIn. So asking a candidate, where's the first spot they go, we've started to build I don't want to call it a database, but at least a actionable table that tells us, okay, of our painters, a good majority of them go to Craigslist first to look for a job. Or, for our trainees, they go Monster first. So, we've been able to build that data and put it together. Another really important part of investing in the search is making sure you train your sources, or making sure you train your recruiters on the sources and how you use databases wisely. How do you do special searches, run search strings? There are numerous training aids out there, too many to mention. Each of my 8 recruiters has been through some sort of search training that they bring back and then teach to the rest of the team. So each one is a subject matter expert on some sort of searching, some sort of string, whether it be inside a specific database or system or whether it be as a whole, just searching the internet, or mining our current system to find old candidates, or mining our SQL queries that we pulled from old systems that we had to send out information to candidates who maybe haven't applied to us or thought about us in years. Work with the sources that produce and then, just dump the rest. Don't be afraid to try new things. Not everything comes from, LinkedIn. And I use that as a perfect example for us is, LinkedIn for us is great for salespeople. But we one time were on the phone with some salespeople, and they were trying to tell us about how, you can find anything out there. And I said, okay, we'll run an automotive painter nationwide and tell me how many people pop up. And it was only like a couple thousand, and they were only searching like painter. And so there were house paint people on there and stuff like that. And so, enough people that maybe one recruiter could have gone through them in a day. So we realized, okay, we have to shift and find where our people are coming from. And that's where those questions that we ask our current candidates come in. Referrals are really important to us too. Make sure they're well tracked and encouraged. Pay not just internals, but think externally too. It's great for the company image. Totally works with candidate engagement for us. We pay $1,000 for any referral. So, and this isn't a sales pitch to everybody on the phone, but one of you knows a painter. You come to us and say, hey, I know a painter, and we hire them. We'll give you $1,000. It's, there's no strings attached. I mean, besides, it pays out after 30 days and 6 months. There's stuff like that, and you have to fill out a W-9. But we don't discriminate. We don't ask questions. If you bring us somebody, as long as it's not a customer of ours, we'll look at it and you'll get paid for it. So, I always like to share kind of books and things I'm reading. I'm always reading, especially when it comes to management books. And this seemed like a good part in the presentation to talk about something quickly. I feel like the last 2 slides tie into the book I'm currently looking at, which is, if you haven't read it, I encourage you to check it out. It's called 212, The Extra Degree. And the premise is that at 211 degrees, water's hot. At 212, it boils. With boiling water comes steam. With steam, you can power a locomotive. So, using that in recruiting and what we're talking about today, I encourage you, invest in your people, invest in your process. Give them that ability to give the 1 extra degree. You will drive results. You will get more than that 1 extra degree back in the results you have. You have to spend money to make money, and that's ultimately what I would say when I'm telling people to invest in their processes. The last slide in this section is, keep it interesting. We all know the one most popular method of recruiting is post and pray. Put it out there and let's just hope that a candidate applies and it's going to be the one candidate that the manager wants to see, and the job's going to close in a record 3 days. We know that's not the way it works. It's not that easy. We need to keep candidates engaged with our words and our postings. In a lot of instances, this is where the first impression starts. So 3 things I point out here. Featured jobs on a career site help highlight certain positions. This feature was something we received with Jobvite, so it was something we had never done until we went live with them. But it drove a different way of thinking as well. If we can feature jobs here, where else can we feature jobs? We can feature on certain job boards like Indeed and things like that. You can pay for them. But also, how do we make jobs look featured on things like Craigslist, which is a huge resource for us? Well, we decided to get with our art director and create our own featured jobs kind of thumbnails and images to put on there. And I'll tell you, it works. People see featured jobs and they're like, man, all right, this is what I want to go after. Create clear and compelling job descriptions. Use a template across all locations and a cohesive message. I use this because this is something, or I say this because this is something we struggled with. We had job descriptions in 10 different locations. We were looking, I'll use an auto painter again or a PDR tech, in 10 different locations, and the job description was different in those 10 different locations. And so you had candidates calling us going, well, I want the job description that's in San Francisco, but I work in Atlanta, Georgia, and so I want to work with that job there. Why is the job different? I don't get it. So we had to start learning how to create cohesive and consistent job descriptions, and then putting kind of that niche data in there somewhere where it's like, okay, when you're looking at this job, the job is the same regardless of where you are, but then here's this section is about the niche data. This is about where this job is a little different, maybe because the route is a lot bigger, or maybe because you might be working in a fixed site, or you might have extra equipment or something along those lines. So that's important, but try to be as consistent as you can, because again, this is a first impression, and as we're here talking about candidate experience today, it's really, really important that you think about what a candidate sees and what a candidate is reacting to, because that's what it is. It's a reaction to what you put out there. Also, if you can make it fun, go for it. I know it's not right for every company, but use brand initiatives where you can. As I mentioned earlier, we've been working with an employment branding company, and one of their ideas, we're DentWizard, one of the ideas they came up with is, welcome to the wonderful wizard of jobs. And at first I saw it and I'm like, that's stupid. And I thought about it more and more, and I got hooked on the idea, and now I'm like planning to take it to an event and put a yellow brick road up to our kiosks where people can apply, and my staff's not thrilled with it, but I thought about dressing them up as the cast of Wizard of Oz. I don't think I'll go that far, but it's really, really engaging. So I've seen jobs about job postings out there that can be fun and that talk about, the different things that a company does, or, they make jokes in their job postings. If you can get away with it, do it, because it grabs attention and it grabs engagement. So highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Tony, I love the mental image of your team at a conference, and like someone's in a Tin Man outfit, maybe you're I'm all for it, and I can't wait to see photos if you actually go through with it. If you get people on board, send me a tweet. So right here, we're going to move on to hiring, the big kahuna. And I totally get, we spent a good amount of time on sourcing because I know that's a big pain point. I think finding those great candidates is such a big piece of the recruiting process, even though it's stuck at the very top of the funnel. But now that we're moving into hiring, I know that DentWizard, your team has had some hurdles that they had to overcome in the old application process. And one thing I love about your guys' story is that you're always iterating, you're always optimizing. And so, Tony, I was wondering if you could go through maybe some examples of your past state, and I know there are some challenges with your application process, and then some cool technology that you signed up for too, beyond Jobvite. So obviously, as a marketer, I'm pretty stoked about all the times you've mentioned our name, but I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. I keep doing that to you there. All right. So eliminate surprises. So I've spent a lot of my career on the system side developing applicant tracking systems, workforce analytics tools, reporting metrics, etc. And the many things I've learned is candidates don't like filling out forms. I know it's shocking, especially those hourly and trade level candidates. They hate forms. So over the years, I've made the forms and applications easier and easier. I've reduced the number of lines a candidate had to type in. I think one of the first ones that comes to mind is I did a contract in between some jobs that I had, and they had an application with like 192 different fields a candidate had to fill out. And I went in with this idea, and I kind of pitched to them. I said, what if we could get it down to like 70 fields or 70 questions, not even 70 fields somebody had to fill out. And they were like, if you can do it, let's go for it. And we did it. And their actual use of their application and their drop-off reduced, and the level of people that were filling out and the quality that they were getting back just skyrocketed. So I've used that in everything. I eliminate fields where I can. So for example, a lot of companies ask, what's your most recent, or tell me, where you went to high school and your GPA and did you graduate and what's your diploma in? And it's not necessarily that they're asking that, there's just fields for it. And why? Because just like, pot roast principle, there always has been, so there should always be fields for that. So I blew that up and I have a drop down. It said, for us, it says, what's your highest level of education completed? And it has everything from, some high school to, master's degree, and somebody can click on it, and that's all we need to know. And that's all that's important to DentWizard. But like for some jobs, we say, okay, it's important for the degree, it's important to know where they went to school. So then it would pop up and say, okay, we want to know where you went to school. But if you can eliminate through drop downs and radio buttons and make it so that the less they have to type, the better. It will pay off. I mean, some places do, like before when I first got here, we had a segmented application where the person would apply, and then they would talk with the recruiter, and then they would get a second section, and then they would meet with the manager, and they'd get the final section. And it was like a 3-segment application on top of WOTC and the affirmative action that they had to fill out. It just didn't work. So we went down to one application. They fill it out the day they apply, and that's it, other than obviously onboarding paperwork. But after that, they got the job, so they better want to fill out a little bit of information for us. This really worked for us. So you want to make sure that their time is seen as valuable. Another thing that I've mentioned, and you heard me say, is mobile is so important. Remember way back to the beginning of the story how we ended up with Jobvite, and one of the things we saw in them was the mobility aspect, the mobile platform. The number one most important factor that they could provide to us was that mobile platform. So Jobvite automatically had it, and we made some minor tweaks, and as I mentioned above, we streamlined the process. And because we did that, it made it more mobile friendly. And these days, everybody's on their phone. Everybody is looking to be able to apply to those things. So in the instances where you can streamline that process, I highly recommend you do it. Start a conversation. So I love this slide. So if you haven't figured out, again, one of the major themes of candidate experience is that it needs to be mobile. So Jobvite's mobile, the candidates are applying mobilely. Now how do we communicate with these candidates in the most mobile way possible? Well, enter text messaging and our partner Text Recruit. To combat the hassle of pre-screen calls, we started texting candidates. So instead of when one of the recruiters calls a candidate and they email a candidate, they also text the candidate. And out of all those three things we do, a good majority of the time, a candidate is texting us back. Texting resulted in a 70% better response rate over email, and the candidate responded a lot faster. And we're not talking a few minutes here. We're not talking, a few hours faster or a day faster. We're talking that they responded minutes, as compared to the day or hours that it took for them to get back to us in an email. And it's funny, you'll think, well, people have email on their phone, but they don't look at it, and it doesn't process the same way in their mind that a text message does. This helps our recruiters move faster on those hot candidates, and then gets us to move on faster from the ones who aren't interested. In realizing how impactful the text message was, we now adopted it into a lot of our processes. People can apply through text message. They can get kind of like an artificial intelligence experience where they text apply, or I believe it's something like DW jobs to a number, and that asks them like 4 or 5 questions, and then the recruiter picks it up from there. And we already know then they're interested in this job and they're interested in this location, and we pick it up from there. And lots of times the recruiter just goes right back to texting with them. We've also included it into setting up interviews. Somebody who is working can text a lot easier than they can step away to make a phone call or try to find privacy to write an email. You can we set up interviews in a matter of minutes over text message. We've adapted the process to the technology that people are using today. So mass text messages are starting conversations in a much simpler way for recruiters than sending out an email or cold calling. So it's a system and a process improvement that I cannot say enough about. I could probably spend an hour talking about that, but I won't because I think I'm already behind. So find your partners. Another issue with the desktop forward process wasn't just with the candidates, but with the DentWizard team. So getting off the candidate experience for just a moment, trying to get hiring managers more involved in the process on a desktop computer wasn't going to work. Like I said, all of our people, including our managers, work in the field. They're behind their wheel. They're driving from location to location. Many of our managers are given a laptop, and I think the funniest thing is when I see them and they open up their laptop and it still has the piece of styrofoam between the screen and the keyboard. And I ask how long they've had it, and they're like, oh, like 3 years. That's how little they open up their computer. So having a mobile platform is really important. And why is it really important? Again, tying into the candidate engagement pieces, if they have the ability to react, how they react trickles down to our candidates. If managers are more engaged in the process, they'll actually do things like submit evaluations and check applications and get back to us faster about our candidates. And transparency of our managers receive in the process gives them more trust in myself and in my team. And they see recruiting as a valuable business partner, which is not something that they viewed recruiting as 3 years ago. So I highly recommend, again, making your manager's process easier, because it's that trickle-down effect. It will trickle down to your candidates.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And one of those things about having happy hiring managers means they're going to put more effort and more, maybe share more excitement about the whole job prospecting, job search, and candidate experience as they're working through it. And I think this stat right here from the Talent Board, which if you guys aren't familiar, definitely check out. They are a fantastic resource for candidate experience, candidate engagement statistics and resources if this is a topic that you guys want to research a little bit more. And the stat is that 61% of candidates with a negative experience say they'll share it with their inner circle. And I know, Tony, you guys have done some really great stuff and some really great tools to help you tap into these experiences and getting feedback on them.
So, if I haven't mentioned yet and you haven't heard me say it, I'm a huge data nerd. I love data. While my team and I had a lot of good ideas on what to fix in the recruiting process, we also implemented tools to track public opinion of our brand in recruiting. And so you heard me talk about this little system called Surveil a while ago, but if you really want to know where we're getting real-time data from our candidates, it's there. We implemented Surveil, and Surveil helps us assess the entire process from the candidate's perspective. The candidate, from the time the candidate first visits our website, they can start implementing giving us information. If you go to like the DentWizard jobs page, you'll see a little tab on the right that says give us feedback. They don't even have to apply to start telling us what we're doing right or what we're doing wrong. And that is so awesome, because we've been able to change the process and change the site and change the way we do things from direct feedback from our candidate. And then as they get further in the process, they go through and they take some, I guess you call them kind of like micro surveys. They're short, 1-minute surveys that they take, and it says, okay, what is it about the system that you like? What is it about, dealing with the recruiter that you liked or disliked? What about dealing with the manager, all the way up to when they get hired? And then we do use it also on the back end so the hiring managers can give feedback on the recruiter, and the recruiter can give feedback on the process with the hiring manager. That helps us in instances maybe where the hiring manager hurt the engagement with the candidate. Because if a candidate said, hey, I really had a bad experience with this interview process, we can look and say, well, what did the recruiter say about it, and what did the manager say about it? And we put all that data together to tell a story. And if I can tell a story, then I can make the right decision. I can see it in my mind, what happened. So, Surveil has helped us learn where candidates feel their bottlenecks, where they feel they're giving too much information or where they want to expand on information. And then there's also something in there that's really cool that came with it, and I had never thought about it before, but it's called brand affinity. They can get in and start telling us from that very first, without even applying, what they think of our brand, what they think of DentWizard. Did they even know about us? Because a lot of people don't, because we're business to business. And then it tracks about the brand affinity throughout all these surveys. And we learn, where people are learning a lot about the company and how they start to feel about the company as they talk to us more. We also get a very important Net Promoter Score. And I bring this up because a lot of people are using different systems to get a Net Promoter Score, but I really encourage you to evaluate how you're getting that, because I've had a lot of conversations recently with people about it, and they're getting a Net Promoter Score based on only 1 or 2 questions, whereas we're using probably several data points to get our Net Promoter Score, and and it's always evolving, and it's giving us real time. We can feel confident that when our score is in the 90s, that it means we're doing a good job versus we're just doing a good job at these 2 things. Surveys and data are especially helpful when you consider that DentWizard team includes hiring managers across the country and some of them international. So, when we survey our managers about the process, it helps us better the process and better the experience for them, which again, through that trickle down, helps us better the experience for our candidates. Feedback isn't just an overall grade either. It's definitive information about the process, about identifying specific places that we can have improvements. It's not just about, oh, I give recruiting an A for, an A for effort, or I give recruiting an overall 5. It's about, very specific questions. So just like the side says, eliminate those swags. And so you remember strategic, wild, another name for a donkey, guess, and gather that data.
Perfect. And then, as you have mentioned, as a data nerd, why don't you run us through this last section of our webinar on reporting and how you clean that up at DentWizard?
You bet. Along with other issues, I've seen in the past that when I first joined the company, reporting was another one. So one source of truth. So it's been with every company in my career over the last probably 10 plus years that the metrics and the reporting have always been kind of that spreadsheet, or they've always just kind of been what the company needs to see, the warm and fuzzy. And simple metrics like time to hire were impossible for DentWizard to do accurately when I came in, as I mentioned before, because of our limitations. Most reporting was done in spreadsheets, and which can't be the one source of truth because, as I said, they're so easily manipulated. Thankfully, as I made it clear in my interview process how important data was to me, and I had very patient leadership, and we went through and understood that it was going to take time to get accurate key data. Well, luckily, through the partnership with Jobvite and the partnerships with teams like at Surveil, we've been able to get data, and we're able to report and expedite our process. And it's not just one piece of data that's important to us, it's many. So we're able to track now so many things. I mean, with our system, there isn't one piece of data that's not tracked and not reportable. We now have information at real time in our fingertips. We're able to, I'm able to click on and run a report at time to fill. What's my time to fill on the jobs for today or for the last hour? What's my time to hire? What's my, where are my best sources today? Because those are really important. Where am I going? They change, they evolve. Maybe if I see a source is going down that's been my best source, maybe I need to find out what went wrong, what postings are out there. So really find that one source of truth. Get crafty with your resources. This is a real short slide here, but get crafty with your plans and your budget. Make sure that you're trying new things. You heard me say that before. Don't let budget sit there without being spent. Not a problem I ever have. You shouldn't have it either. Money's there to be spent money to make money, whatever those cliches you want to use. They never have to worry because there are so many recruiting tools out there. They're just so cool to be living in this time where these systems and these different analytics tools all exist. Test them out. See what works. Make sure you have tracking and KPIs to ensure that they're both working and reinvesting in, but you're never going to grow by following that pot roast principle. So, a great quote here that I thought about is, if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur. So, next steps. Everything's still a work in progress. Our career site's great, but we need to incorporate our branding. We need to discuss a talent analytics tool for assessments. This is something I spearheaded in previous companies before and I'm very passionate about. We're going to up our social media. Surveys will continue to evolve. We'll work on both measuring and change to impact on softer metrics like brand affinity. We're going to check and make sure everyone's happy. Don't just focus on the admins or just the candidates or just the manager. Everyone needs to work together to be successful. So before we go to questions, I want to wrap up with something that stuck from me from a conference that I attended a few weeks ago. And I apologize because it's a quote that's from Chicken Scratch. I was trying to write it as fast as he could, so I hope I got it right. But he was talking about curation is a really important aspect to an employer branding and engagement. The goal of our social channels, those people outward facing in your company, is to build community, and you do that by providing value. Think about how you can provide value to your audience, and that's going to get them more engaged. So with that, I will quickly turn it over to Claire, and then I think we'll get to questions.
Perfect. And I think Michelle's going to help us out with those questions. Is that right, Michelle?
Yep, absolutely. We have some great ones from the attendees. So if you guys, keep them coming. Claire, did you have any final comments to say before I jumped into Q&A?
Nope, let's go for it.
All right, perfect. All right, Tony, here's our first question. I feel it is more challenging to recruit talent for entry-level positions as compared to professional level. Are there any additional suggestions or insights on entry-level positions, especially when they are niche positions?
Yeah, that's actually a great question and ties really well into DentWizard. So, it sometimes is really challenging to recruit for an entry-level position versus somebody who has a professional, has that professional experience, because you're hiring for attitude and, training for aptitude. It's a saying we use around here a lot. So the best thing I can say, and probably the best experiences here at DentWizard, we have, where I sit in St. Louis, we have a training facility here. So our technicians for, I'll use paintless dent repair. We bring them in, we recruit them, we train them here in the facility for 8 weeks. We pay for all their travel. They learn the job and then they go back. But while they're here, they also get to experience the culture and the people that work here at corporate and meet with our CEO and our COO and me and other executives in the company, and they get to learn about all the different things we do here. And so to answer the question is, I think that setting up a really good training program for those niche areas are really important, because that's how, hire for attitude, train for aptitude, and do that in a way that you can grow somebody. Another thing that I highly recommend is workforce analytics tools. A lot of them out there. One that I was very impressed with used to be called People Answers. Now I believe it's owned by Infor Talent Science, and it's a tool that basically allows you to build a profile on your candidates. So what does the top candidate look like? And you build a profile, and then as candidates apply, they can take this assessment and you can compare them to that profile. So that's another one that I highly recommend.
Great, thank you. Next question here. How do you hire people in an industry that may or may not use online resources?
Sure. So I apologize if I'm not getting the question entirely correct. So like in our world, the kind of people that work in the technician world aren't really highly computerized people. Is that a word? I don't know if that's a word. But anyway, I'm going to go with it. And they're not using the computer. They're not looking at a lot of websites. They're not going through Monster. They don't have resumes. And so, you've got to get out there and engage them. And so that's where referrals really come in really well, and getting out there and talking about who do you know, just making cold calls or going out to different industry events. You've really got to get the candidates where they are. We deal a lot with this also when we're looking for like bilingual or native Spanish-speaking candidates. We have to go into the areas and into those networking groups that they're part of. I've also have been known to walk in the back door of a shop on a Friday night after managers leave or having a manager do that and start talking to candidates about our job, not necessarily to poach them away or try to lure them away, but understanding better who they know. So, in a day where we are so immersed in technology, it is really hard to reach those people who aren't out there. But the best thing you can do is go through referrals and go through people they know and try to reach them that way.
Great, thank you, Tony. All right, I know we are getting close to the top of the hour, but I do want to go ahead and fit one more question in for you. So last question here. Have you gotten any pushback from hiring managers or candidates themselves with texting, and how have you dealt with that?
Sure. So we have very few. Now we're very lucky that we have a system, in Text Recruit. So with Text Recruit, if somebody says they don't want to get just like an email, they say stop or decline or don't text me, the system automatically flags that and won't allow us to text them anymore. So it completely takes them out of the process. But it's funny how many people, or those few people that do that sometimes, we'll start talking to them through about a job, and they're like, oh, that was you texting me? Oh, how do I get back involved in that? So I don't think that people pushing back on texting is something that should make you shy away from it, because it is such a powerful tool these days. And when it does happen, you just take it with a grain of salt. Okay, you don't want to get text messages from us? I will reach out to you the old way. It's kind of like when the internet came along. People didn't want, emails, or they didn't have email, so you still had to use snail mail. Well, if they don't want a text message, okay, we'll use email, and we'll just, correspond that way, or a phone call and play phone tag. But I do encourage people to really get involved with text messaging, and I encourage the candidates because it does produce a much better experience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tony, for that Q&A session. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and we do have to wrap it up there. So I do just want to thank you so much for being here with us today. And Claire, thank you as well. That was a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it. So again, thank you both so much. I want to thank each of our attendees for joining us as well, and a special thanks to Jobvite for making this event possible. A couple of final notes before you exit. Today's program has been approved for both HRCI and SHRM recertification credits. The HRCI number for today's event is 350485, and the SHRM code is 18-K3SP9. The slide with today's credit information is up on your screen. And you'll also receive an email coming from the HR Daily Advisor in about 24 hours or so after this event that will contain a copy of today's credit information along with a link to the recording if you did want to forward it along to any colleagues. I know a few of you asked if you will be receiving a recording as well, and yes, that will be sent out in about 24 hours. And one final note, at the close of this webcast, you will see an exit survey. In an effort to make each of our webcasts valuable to you, we would appreciate your input. All right, everyone, that's it for the day. HR Daily Advisor and Jobvite would like to thank you all again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thanks, everyone.